For over a decade, we've watched them save the world. Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Hawkeye, gods and geniuses who seem completely indestructible. But behind the CGI and spectacle, these actors have faced battles far more terrifying than any supervillain. Some have stared death in the face, others discovered genetic time bombs ticking away inside their bodies, and a few came closer to losing everything than their fans will ever know. This is a story of 7 Marvel stars who discovered that real life doesn't come with plot armor, and it starts with the man who brings the monster to life. In 2001, Mark Ruffalo was on top of the world. His breakout performance in You Can Count on Me had earned him critical acclaim and marked a turning point in his career. At 33, he was finally getting the recognition he'd worked years to achieve. Then, the night before a routine doctor's visit, he had a dream that would change his life forever.
I had this crazy dream that I had a brain tumor. I just woke up and I just knew that I had a brain tumor. There was no way that I didn't. And so I went to the doctor and they did the CAT scan. They're like, you have a mass behind your left ear, and you will need to get it removed. We don't know what it is exactly, but we think it's operable, and you just deal with it.
The scan revealed an acoustic neuroma, a benign brain tumor growing on his acoustic nerve. Although it could have been worse, benign doesn't mean harmless. Left untreated, it could have killed him. Even with surgery, there was a 70% chance he'd suffer permanent facial paralysis, leaving half his face frozen forever. And if that wasn't bad enough, he was at risk of losing his hearing too. The timing couldn't have been worse. Ruffalo was about to start filming The Last Castle with Robert Redford, and his wife Sunrise was pregnant with their first child. He made the agonizing decision to delay telling his wife until after their baby was born, carrying the weight of his potential death sentence alone. The surgery lasted several hours, and at one point, Mark's heart stopped briefly. When he woke up, the tumor was gone, but so was the hearing in his left ear.
They told me that the surgery went well. They got all the tumor. They preserved my nerve, but I just heard a ringing in my left ear.
This was tough to deal with, but Mark was just grateful that his face was okay. Being an actor, he needed it to be able to put food on the table for his family. However, just one day after the surgery, his worst nightmare came true.
The first day, I was just out of it. And then the second day, they came in, they were checking my face, and my face began to go paralyzed. So by the third day out, fourth day out from the surgery, I couldn't close my eye, and I couldn't move my face, my left side of my face, and that was pretty alarming. It was alarming to me, and I think it was confounding to my doctor. He really didn't know what was happening.
For months, he couldn't blink his left eye or move the left side of his mouth. Simple acts like drinking water became exercises in frustration and embarrassment. It was 10 long months after the surgery, after trying every treatment under the sun, that he finally started to regain function of his face. The experience fundamentally changed how he approached his work and his life. Every role became more precious, every day a gift he hadn't expected to receive.
I've been really lucky. Most of it's come back. I mean, yeah, it'll never be back 100%, but and I really was afraid of that, and I was afraid to tell people that. But I've integrated it all into my life, and here I am.
As well as the lingering issues with his face, the hearing in his left ear never came back. But instead of dwelling on what he lost, Ruffalo channeled the experience into something positive, something that can also be said of another Avenger whose life was left hanging by a thread after a freak accident.
Someone's been run over by a snowcat. Hurry.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
So I don't know. Someone's in front of my house on the ground. They got run over by a snowcat. He's been crushed.
Okay, we have...
Send paramedics, ambulance.
Everyone's on the way right now, okay?
New Year's Day 2023 should have been a quiet family day for Jeremy Renner. Instead, it became the day he almost died trying to save his nephew's life. Heavy snow had trapped his nephew's truck on Renner's Nevada property, and being the kind of man who fixes problems himself, Renner fired up his piston bully snowcat to clear a path. The piston bully isn't your average snowplow. It's an industrial beast that weighs over 14,000 pounds, upwards of 5 cars combined. As Renner worked to free his nephew's vehicle, he got out of the snowcat without setting the parking brake. Then the machine started rolling toward his nephew. What happened next was pure instinct. Renner tried to jump back into the moving vehicle to stop it, but the track caught his leg and pulled him under.
Got out to tell me something, and then that's when it started coming at me like full force.
So he tried to jump on it?
He tried to jump on it into the thing, and it took him under.
14,000 pounds of metal rolled over his body, crushing his leg and torso, puncturing his liver, and collapsing his lung. The machine came to a stop on top of him, pinning him in the snow. His nephew and a neighbor fought to lift the massive machine off him while Renner lay there, fully conscious, watching his own blood pool in the snow around him.
Just breathe, that's it. And I stood over him in his crouched position, holding his arm for the entire time. From seconds after that guy came over, it was just that, and I'm just like locked in on him.
It was like a boa constrictor kind of feeling, like it just squeezes more, you suck, blow out air, it's squeezing you. And it's because my whole rib cage, my shoulder, all this side of it was just collapsed on my lung that was already collapsed. It was suffocating myself.
With every ounce of strength they had, Renner's nephew and the neighbor managed to pull him out from under the snowcat and keep him alive until help arrived. Jeremy lay crumpled in the snow with his body broken and battered.
And they're like, what's my body look like? Am I just gonna be like a spine and a brain, like a science experiment?
When the paramedics arrived, they found him in critical condition. His heart rate had bottomed out at 18 beats per minute, which is basically dead by medical standards. The EMTs worked frantically to stabilize him, fighting to keep him alive as his body shut down.
They're trying to do everything they can to keep me alive. And I just got tired, and that's when I was gone.
Miraculously, they managed to get him back, but Renner was in a really bad way. The snowcat had crushed everything from his shin up to the orbital bone in his face, and his life was hanging in the balance.
I break like 38 bones, my skull cracks open, and my eyeball comes out. I can see my eyeball with my other eye. And I have to survive for 45 minutes on the ice till I get hella lifted out of there.
When he arrived at the hospital, the doctors considered drastic measures, including amputating his leg and removing his damaged eye. However, his family sought out another doctor who specializes in these types of cases.
Oh, he's gonna lose his eye, we're gonna cut off his leg. I mean, all this kind of tragic sort of prognosis, whatever you want to call it, right? So this guy comes in, no, it's fine. We're going to hammer this thing in. We're going to do this, going to do his faceplate, do the thing. We're going to do this.
The doctor reconstructed Renner's leg, ribs, and facial structures using titanium plates, ultimately preserving his limbs and vision. What followed was an agonizing recovery process that truly tested him. His daughter Ava became his motivation, his reason to endure the pain of countless surgeries and grueling physical therapy sessions. The Marvel family rallied around him too, with castmates posting support and fans sending thousands of messages, all willing him back to health. Renner's strength, humor, and sheer determination carried him through his rehabilitation. But even now, after over 2 years of healing and a return to the spotlight, one wound remains open. Renner still blames himself for the accident and says the hardest part wasn't the pain or the recovery, but knowing what he put his family through that day.
I heard that you had, in sign language, you said to your family, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because I am sorry.
Renner's story and recovery have inspired millions, but there's another Marvel star who suffered a nasty injury far more recently. On May 30th, 2025, Evangeline Lilly posted 2 disturbing images to social media. In them, she can be seen bloodied and bruised from a hole punctured through her face by a rock. Apparently, she was walking along the beach when she fainted and fell face first into a boulder. She said that despite the gruesome injury, when she went to the hospital, the nurses and doctors were more determined to find out the cause of the blackout than to stitch up the hole. Lilly has been blacking out since childhood. Doctors have run every test imaginable: heart monitors, blood work, glucose tests, but they can't explain why they happen. She said, "My partner says that when I black out, I look like I die. He gets very afraid. My eyes roll back in my head and all life leaves my body." When she was younger, doctors believed that the cause was hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, but that was later ruled out. And today, even after running more tests following her accident, they still have no idea what it is. Apparently, most patients with this issue are never given a medical answer, and they just have to live in the mystery of not knowing. Today, 3 weeks after her fall, Lilly appears to be recovering well, though she's still dealing with a concussion and some scarring. Had she hit that boulder just a few inches differently, the outcome could have been far worse. But this isn't Evangeline's first brush with death. At around 6:30 a.m. on December 20th, 2006, Evangeline received a phone call while on the set of the TV show Lost. Her house was on fire. By the time the firefighters arrived, the flames had consumed everything. The fire captain said, "When we arrived, the house was fully engulfed. It was a complete loss. Just the roof was still standing. If she'd been sleeping in her bed that morning, she might not have made it out." The house's windows were fitted with security bars, meant to keep intruders out, but they would have made escape nearly impossible. Even the firefighters struggled to get through them. But luckily, Evangeline was already miles away, filming on a beach. Pure chance had saved her life. Lilly's story isn't just about freak accidents, it's about living with something unpredictable, something that could strike at any time without warning, and she's not alone. Another Marvel star has spent years fighting a similar kind of battle, a condition that keeps coming back no matter how many times he thinks it's gone. For 24 years, Hugh Jackman has played Wolverine. He embodies the character so well that fans can't imagine anyone else with the claws. But while Wolverine has a healing factor that can cure any wound, Jackman has been fighting a very real enemy that keeps returning: skin cancer. It started in 2013. After his wife Deb pointed it out, Jackman noticed a small spot on his nose that looked different from his other freckles. Growing up in Australia, he'd spent countless hours in the sun, but this was the first time he'd worried about the consequences. He went to the doctor and got tested, and the biopsy confirmed his fears: basal cell carcinoma. Jackman made a post on Instagram shortly after with tape over his nose, captioned, "Deb said to get the mark on my nose checked. Boy, she was right. I had a basal cell carcinoma. Please don't be foolish like me. Get yourself checked and use sunscreen." From the tone of his post, it seemed like he'd caught it early and put it behind him. Basal cell carcinoma is the most common and generally the least aggressive form of skin cancer, so that wasn't surprising. But cancer is still cancer, and in Jackman's case, it didn't stay gone. Over the next 4 years, he was diagnosed with skin cancer 5 more times. Each diagnosis meant more biopsies, more surgery, and more uncertainty.
We see basal cell carcinomas, squamous cell carcinomas, melanomas more in sun-exposed areas. It can happen in any skin type, so everyone needs to be checked. And also you have to be checked even where the sun doesn't shine, so it's a head-to-toe skin check. But we look more in areas, I like to look along the forehead line because that's where you missed your sunscreen, around the eyes, the nose, and around the mouth.
The tip of Jackman's nose became a battlefield, scarred from repeated procedures to remove cancerous cells. The psychological toll was as real as the physical one. Every new spot, every discolored patch, every change in his skin became a source of anxiety. Jackman used his platform to educate others, regularly posting reminders about sun protection and the importance of regular skin checks. In 2017, when he announced his retirement from playing Wolverine leading up to the release of Logan, he had his 6th basal cell carcinoma removed from his face. After this, he was in the clear for a few years, but he had a recurrence in 2021. Once again, he had the cancer cut out, holding out hope that this would be the end of it. But in 2023, he posted this video on Twitter.
Hey guys, so I wanted you to hear it from me, just in case someone sees me on the street or whatever. I've just had 2 biopsies done. I just went to my doctor, Dr. Iron, who's awesome, and she just saw little things, could be or could not be basal cell, in her opinion. She doesn't know. I'll find out in 2 or 3 days, and as soon as I know, I'll let you know. If I can just take this opportunity to remind you, summer is coming. For those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, please wear sunscreen. It is just not worth it. No matter how much you want to tan, trust me, trust me, trust me. This is all stuff that happened 25 years ago. It's coming out now. Put some sunscreen on. You'll still have an incredible time out there. All right? Please be safe.
Fortunately, the biopsies came back negative. It wasn't cancer this time. But the scare was a stark reminder that for Jackman, the threat never fully goes away. After a decade of surgeries, scars, and close calls, he's learned to live with that uncertainty. But in some ways, that might be easier than having everything crash down on you all at once.
Black Panther star Letitia Wright has been released from a Boston hospital after getting hurt during filming. A spokesperson says Wright was hurt while filming an overnight stunt for Wakanda Forever.
By 2021, Letitia Wright carried more than just the weight of playing Shuri, Princess of Wakanda. After Chadwick Boseman's death, she'd become the emotional center of the Black Panther franchise, tasked with honoring his legacy while grieving the loss of her friend and mentor. The pressure was immense, and then the accident happened. It took place in August 2021 during filming for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Wright was performing a motorcycle stunt sequence when the rig she was riding malfunctioned, sending her crashing down with injuries to her shoulder and back. What should have been a routine day on set became an emergency trip to the hospital. At first, Marvel downplayed everything. Their official statement read, "Letitia Wright sustained minor injuries today while filming a stunt for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. She's currently receiving care in a local hospital and is expected to be released soon." They assured everyone that production would continue uninterrupted. However, that's not what ended up happening. In November 2021, 3 months after the accident occurred, production on the movie was shut down because Letitia needed more time to heal. It turns out her injuries were far more serious than initially reported. She'd suffered a fractured shoulder and concussion, among other injuries that needed a long time to heal. In her absence, director Ryan Coogler spent months filming every possible scene that didn't involve her character, but eventually he ran out of material. Finally, in January 2022, Letitia returned to set, determined to finish the movie as a tribute to Chadwick, despite still dealing with post-concussion syndrome. When the movie was released in November 2022, Letitia did an interview with Variety where she spoke about the accident, admitting, "I'm still processing it. I'm still working through it in therapy. It was really traumatic." Like Letitia, some people face danger in bursts, such as a near-death experience from a freak accident. For others, the threat builds up slowly over years, until one day they wake up and realize they're on the edge of losing everything. That's exactly where Robert Downey Jr. found himself in the late 90s, not from injury, but from a spiral of addiction that nearly killed him. Before he was Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. was Hollywood's golden boy. Oscar nominated for Chaplin at just 27, massively talented and widely respected throughout the industry. He had everything, except control over the demons that were slowly killing him. The addiction started early. His father, filmmaker Robert Downey Sr., had introduced him to drugs when he was just 6 years old, and by his teens, he was already an addict. When the 90s rolled around, he was spiraling completely out of control. In 1996, he was pulled over by police for speeding and found to be intoxicated behind the wheel of his car. Inside, they found heroin, cocaine, crack, and a .357 Magnum. He was arrested and charged with felony drug possession and misdemeanor DUI, but ultimately given probation instead of jail time. Just weeks later, he broke into a neighbor's house while high, thinking it was his own, and passed out in their child's bed. He was arrested again, sent to rehab, and eventually released, but he couldn't stay clean. Over the next 5 years, Robert was arrested multiple times, entered rehab after rehab, and relapsed every time. He had a level of drug consumption so high that it's a wonder he never overdosed. In 1999, after skipping court-ordered rehab, he was sentenced to 3 years in California's state prison system.
What was your lowest point?
It was probably when I realized I was going to be going and doing time, and I wasn't going to...
In a real prison?
In a real prison, yes.
He served about a year behind bars, during which time he genuinely considered unaliving himself, but even that couldn't stop the addiction. As soon as he got out, he picked up right where he left off. By the early 2000s, Robert Downey Jr. was finished in Hollywood. He was uninsurable. No studio would touch him because the insurance premiums were astronomical. He was blacklisted, broke, and considered a lost cause. Friends, family, and industry peers genuinely feared he'd end up dead before he turned 40. But then, something changed. He met Susan Levin, a film executive working on Gothica, and the two began dating. Unlike past relationships, Susan gave him a choice: get clean or lose her. Around the same time, Downey said he had a moment of absolute clarity, not in rehab or in a courtroom, but driving alone in his car with a stash of drugs in the passenger seat. He pulled over near the ocean, looked at the drugs, and realized if he didn't stop now, he was going to die. He got out of the car, walked to the edge of the water, and threw everything in.
I think there's an aspect of it that clearly has to do with one's own morality, because it's too easy to jump on that wagon of it's a disease and my brain's been hijacked and I no longer have a choice in the matter. I think there's that element for sure, but past a certain point you have to stand up inside yourself and change. You know, everybody does with any issue. Ultimately, anything else is just a really, new age excuse, if you ask me.
Recovery wasn't immediate or easy, but with the help of Susan and notably Mel Gibson, he slowly rebuilt his life and career. Small roles led to bigger ones, and by 2008, Jon Favreau took the ultimate gamble, casting him as Tony Stark in Iron Man.
I believe that, most difficult situations will resolve themselves if you are persistent and if you don't give up entirely, and that's what I never did. I never gave up.
Downey's story proves that sometimes the closest calls with death don't come from accidents or disease. They come from the choices we make. But while some actors battle addiction, others face threats that are completely beyond their control. Chris Hemsworth was at the peak of his career in 2022. Thor was one of Marvel's most beloved characters, and Hemsworth seemed to have everything: talent, success, a loving family, and his health. Then he agreed to do a genetic test for a National Geographic documentary called Limitless, and it changed everything.
The idea was that we're going to do a deep dive into my blood work, look at my genetics, and on camera tell me what they found.
But Chris wasn't prepared at all for what the results would reveal.
You have a very rare combination, which is you have 2 copies of ApoE4.
Most people carry 1 copy of this gene, if any, but Hemsworth got 1 from his father and 1 from his mother.
And what does that mean exactly?
That means you have an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease.
His grandfather had Alzheimer's, and Chris had watched the disease slowly erase the man who helped raise him, fading his memories until only a shell remained. So when he received the results, it hit especially close to home. While not a near-death experience like the other Marvel stars on this list, it was something arguably more haunting. The knowledge that his own mind could one day betray him, and there might be nothing he could do to stop it.
You're constantly thinking you're going to live forever, especially as a young individual, and then to all of a sudden be told, oh, this may be the thing that might take you out, was like, whoa.
The doctor told him that having 2 copies of this gene puts him at 8 to 10 times greater risk of developing Alzheimer's, a number that made the threat feel real and immediate. But as heavy as that news was, it also gave Chris something most people never get, a chance to do something about it.
You have this gene and it doesn't guarantee this thing is going to happen. And there are some genes that do, by the way. There are certain genes that if you have the gene for Huntington's disease, you're going to get Huntington's disease. This isn't that kind of gene, but it's increasing your odds. And that's the bad news. And then the good news is the earlier you know this, the more you can do to mitigate risk.
So Hemsworth threw himself into research about prevention. He changed his diet, intensified his exercise routines, and began practicing meditation. But the news didn't just affect his daily habits, it reshaped his entire outlook on life and career. He decided to take a step back from acting, choosing to be more present with family and more selective with future roles. He said, "It really triggered something in me to want to take some time off, and since we finished the show, I've been completing the things I was already contracted to do. Now when I finish this press tour this week, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna have a good chunk of time off and just simplify. Be with the kids, be with my wife." Since receiving the diagnosis, Chris has only appeared in 2 films, Extraction 2 and Furiosa, but Extraction 2 was shot beforehand, making Furiosa his only post-diagnosis role in nearly 3 years. These 7 stories remind us that behind every superhero costume is a human being fighting battles we never see. Brain tumors, snowplow accidents, blackouts, skin cancer, stunt injuries, addiction, Alzheimer's. Each represents a different way that life can humble even those who seem to have it all. In the end, it's not fame or strength on screen that defines these actors, but how they endure the pain that no audience ever sees.